I walked into a bank in Raleigh carrying one overnight bag, my laptop, and exactly $712 to my name. 23 minutes later, the branch manager turned his monitor toward me and asked why I was trying to close an account holding $6.8 million. I laughed because I thought he had pulled up someone else's information. That morning, my husband of 9 years had told me he was leaving me for my younger sister. My mother had stood in my kitchen and told me not to make things ugly because my sister was pregnant and needed stability. My husband had emptied almost all of our savings, taken the keys to the SUV I drove every day, and given me until dinner to get my things out of the house. My sister had already decided my home office would become the nursery. Before I walked out, she looked at the cabinet prototypes stacked in the garage and told me maybe if I had paid half as much attention to my husband as I had to those stupid shelves, none of this would have happened. Then my mother looked at the two bags in my hands and said, "Some women build a life, Erin. Some women just take up space in one." They all believed I was walking away with nothing. What none of them knew was that those stupid shelves had been earning money for years. And the man who had hidden that truth from me was the same man who had spent years convincing me they were a failure. My name is Erin Walker, and I was 35 when I learned that being the strongest person in a family does not always make you the most respected. Sometimes it simply makes you the easiest person to neglect. I lived outside Raleigh, North Carolina, in a 3-bedroom house with pale blue siding, a narrow porch, and a maple tree that dropped leaves directly into the gutters every fall. Luke and I were not wealthy. He worked regional sales for a building supply company. I was a pediatric occupational therapist at a rehabilitation clinic. We had a mortgage, student loans. We had finally almost paid off a refrigerator covered in appointment cards and a dining table that collected mail no matter how often I cleared it. It was the kind of ordinary American life I had once believed was proof I had finally built something stable. For most of my childhood, stability had been my job. My younger sister Cassidy was 4 years younger and what my mother called more sensitive. That phrase excused almost everything. If Cassidy borrowed my clothes without asking, I was told to share. If she forgot to pay me back, Mom said I was better with money anyway. When she quit community college after one semester, Mom called her brave for recognizing what wasn't right for her. When I worked evenings through graduate school, Mom said I was exhausting myself because I always had something to prove. Cassidy got protected from consequences. I got praised for surviving them. Luke used to tell me that was what he loved about me. "You don't fall apart," he once said. "You handle things." For years I heard affection in those words. I know now that he was also learning exactly how much pain he could hand me before expecting me to carry it quietly. The morning my marriage ended began with a text from Cassidy asking whether I was at work. I told her my first patient had canceled and I might be home early. 3 dots appeared on my screen, vanished, and appeared again. Finally, she wrote, "Come home first. Mom is here too. I thought someone had died. I thought Mom had gotten terrible medical results. I thought Cassidy had crashed her car. My husband never crossed my mind." Luke's truck was in the driveway when I arrived, even though he was supposed to be visiting contractors 2 hours away. Cassidy's white crossover sat behind it. Mom's sedan was at the curb. I stayed in my car until the dashboard stopped chiming, then forced myself inside. Cassidy's sandals were beside the front door. Her pink insulated tumbler was on the entry table. Our wedding photograph had disappeared from the hallway console. My body understood before my mind did. Luke was standing beside the kitchen sink. Cassidy was next to him. Mom sat at the breakfast table with both hands around a mug. Nobody spoke. "What happened?" I asked. Luke exhaled. "Erin, sit down." "No, please." What happened? Cassidy's eyes filled with tears. She had always been excellent at crying without ruining her makeup. Why is she crying? Mom said my name in that familiar warning tone. Erin. What? This is difficult for everybody. Then Luke reached for Cassidy's hand. I watched their fingers close together. No, I said. Cassidy whispered, I'm sorry. No. Luke stepped toward me. It didn't happen the way you think. I stared at his hand around my sister's. I would love to hear the version where that sentence helps you. It started when you were working those late nights. How long he looked at Cassidy. Cassidy looked at Mom. Mom looked at me. How long Luke finally said, about 8 months. 8 months meant Christmas, when Cassidy stayed in our guest room because she claimed a pipe had burst in her apartment. It meant my birthday, when Luke disappeared from dinner for 20 minutes to take a client call. It meant the Saturday Cassidy came over crying after an argument with a boyfriend I now suspected never existed. 8 months meant they had watched me set plates on a table for them while carrying on an affair under my roof. I looked at Mom. How long have you known? That isn't important. How long? She sighed. 3 weeks. For 3 weeks, my mother had called me almost every day. She had sent me a recipe. She had complained about her neighbor's barking dog. She had asked whether Luke and I would host Thanksgiving again. She had known my husband was sleeping with my sister and still managed to discuss weather with me. Why are we all here? I asked. Cassidy slowly lowered one hand to her stomach. I knew before she spoke. I'm pregnant. My mother stood immediately. The baby changes things, not the affair, not the betrayal, the baby. I laughed once because reality had become too ridiculous for any other sound. What things we have to be practical. My husband got my sister pregnant and your concern is being practical. Lower your voice. I'm in my own house. Luke looked down. Mom said, that is actually part of what we need to discuss. I stopped laughing. Luke spoke before I could ask. The mortgage is in my name. It was technically true. When we bought the house, my graduate school debt had made his credit profile cleaner for the loan. But for 6 years, I had paid toward every mortgage payment. I had paid for half the roof. I had painted the kitchen. I had spent weekends pulling weeds, replacing cabinet handles, changing filters, and making the place ours. Luke reduced 6 years of marriage to a line on a statement. I think it would be better if you stayed somewhere else for a while. You want me to leave? Cassidy wiped underneath one eye. Just until things settle. I stared at her. Are you moving in? Nobody answered. Mom finally said Cassidy's lease ends next month. With a baby coming, paying rent somewhere else makes no sense. So she sleeps with my husband and gets my bedroom because it saves money. Don't be crude. Mom, she is pregnant by my husband. And she cannot undo that. But you can undo me. No one is undoing you. I looked at Cassidy. What happened to the boyfriend you kept telling me about? Her expression shifted. There wasn't one, was there? Luke said. This is not helping. I looked at him. No, Luke. I think for the first time all morning, I'm actually understanding something. Cassidy's tears disappeared. You know what, this is exactly why he was miserable. There she was, the real Cassidy. You make everything feel like a chore, she said. Bills, schedules, work, your patients, those projects in the garage. Everything has to be managed. Luke said he felt like another appointment on your calendar. I turned to him. You said that I tried to tell you I was lonely. You told me you were tired. I stopped trying because you never listened. Cassidy folded her arms. Maybe if you had paid half as much attention to your husband as you did to those stupid shelves, none of this would have happened. I stared at her. Those stupid shelves. She had no idea how deeply that sentence cut. Years earlier, I had spent nights in our garage designing adaptive cabinet systems for people with limited mobility. The idea came from a patient who could no longer safely reach her own dishes. For almost 2 years, I tested handles, springs, pull-down shelves, pantry drawers, and safety stops. I believed in those designs with a kind of hope that embarrassed me now. Luke had eventually told me nobody wanted them. Cassidy knew exactly how much that failure had hurt, and she had chosen that wound deliberately. Mom stepped between us. Enough. Erin has always been better at taking care of herself. Cassidy needs support right now. There it was again. Erin can handle it. I looked at my mother. So because I can survive this, it's acceptable to do it to me. That is not what I said. It's what you've said my entire life. Luke walked to the counter and slid a folder toward me. I did not open it. Separation paperwork, he said. Dragging this out isn't good for anyone. How long have you had that ready? Long enough. Then he pulled out his phone. I moved my paycheck and most of the joint savings into my personal account this morning. There's enough left to cover the automatic bills until the end of the month. I opened our banking app. $1,418.33. My personal account held $700. Our emergency fund had contained a little over $32,000 the previous night. You moved all of it. Most of it came from my commissions. That was our money. I have a baby coming. The word "our" disappeared remarkably fast when it stopped serving him. I need my car. The Highlander is through my credit union. I drive it to work. Cassidy needs something safe. Cassidy glanced at the key fob in my hand. Not at my face. At the key. I took it from my purse and placed it on the kitchen island. Luke's eyes followed it. How am I supposed to get around? You have a salary, he said. You'll figure something out. Mom nodded. Exactly. Erin always figures things out. I looked at all three of them and suddenly understood what they were waiting for. They wanted tears. Luke already looked exhausted, as though he were enduring an unreasonable wife. Cassidy was ready to cry again. Mom was prepared to tell me I was being dramatic. If I broke down, they could use my pain as evidence that they were right. So I picked up my bags. Mom frowned. That's all you're taking for now. Erin, you're 35. You have a career. You'll recover. Is that supposed to make this okay? I'm saying Cassidy needs more support than you do. I nodded slowly. Of course she does. Mom's shoulders relaxed because she mistook resignation for agreement. Then she said, some women build a life, Erin. Some women just take up space in one. Maybe this is your chance to figure out which one you've been. Even Luke looked uncomfortable. But she didn't take it back. I opened the front door. Luke called after me. For one stupid second, I thought maybe he would apologize. Leave the garage remote. I took it from my bag and set it beside the SUV key on the table. Then I walked away from 9 years of marriage carrying 2 bags. My friend Michelle was visiting her parents in Virginia, so I booked one night at a cheap extended stay hotel near my clinic. I ordered a rideshare and sat on the curb while the driver made his way toward me. I felt embarrassed, which made no logical sense. I had not cheated. I had not lied. Yet betrayal can make the person who is betrayed feel as if everybody else has discovered some humiliating defect she should have noticed herself. Halfway to the hotel, I opened my bank app again. $712. Then I remembered Willow Reach. Years earlier, when I began building those adaptive storage systems, I had opened a small business checking account under the name Willow Reach Design. There might have been $200 or $300 left in it. Luke used to joke about the account. Look at you, he said the day we opened it. CEO of the garage. At the time, I laughed with him. I had not yet learned the difference between someone laughing with you and someone training you to laugh at yourself. I changed the rideshare destination. The bank sat in a shopping center between a pharmacy and a grocery store. Nothing impressive. I walked inside carrying both bags. A teller named Brianna asked how she could help. I need to close an old business account. She took my ID and typed. Then she stopped. She typed again. Her smile disappeared. Can you give me 1 minute? My stomach tightened. Is something wrong? Probably not. I just need my manager. A man named Mr. Patel came from an office in the back. He looked at my identification, then at the screen. Ms. Walker, would you step into my office? I immediately assumed Luke had somehow overdrafted the account too. Inside, I placed my bags beside the chair. You wanted to close Willow Reach Design? Yes. Do you know the current balance may be a couple $100? He looked at the monitor again. Ms. Walker, are you expecting a large payment? No. How large are we talking? He turned the monitor toward me. $6,842. I stared at it, then laughed. That isn't mine. I thought we had the wrong account too. You do. He read the last 4 digits aloud. I knew them. No. There have been several deposits during the past 6 weeks. The largest cleared yesterday afternoon. From Who Harbor and Pine Home Products. The name was familiar. Harbor and Pine sold storage products, kitchen organizers, bathroom safety fixtures, and home accessibility equipment through national home improvement chains. I have never worked for them. Mr. Patel looked at the transaction notes. Does Reachline Adaptive Storage mean anything to you? My entire body went still. What did you say, Reachline? Years earlier, my original prototype folder had been labeled Reachline because Luke said Willow Reach sounded too soft for manufacturers. That was mine. Mr. Patel leaned forward. What was yours? The design. A contact number was listed beside one of the transfers. I called from his office. A woman named Caroline answered from Harbor and Pine's product acquisitions team. When I told her my name, there was a long pause. Ms. Walker, we have been trying to reach you. Why? She asked me questions about the earliest Reachline prototypes. What material had I used for the first handle? Why did the cabinet stop halfway through its downward movement? Why was the pantry drawer angled slightly upward instead of sliding straight out? I answered all of them. The halfway stop existed because my patient Ruth sometimes lost her grip without warning. I wanted the shelf to hold rather than slam downward. Caroline became quiet. That matches the original development notes exactly. What is happening? The explanation was simpler than the terror building inside me. Luke had taken my prototypes to a small regional distributor several years earlier. I knew he had approached companies. I had asked him to. He worked in sales and I hated sales calls. What I did not know was that one distributor had actually been interested. My products had not failed. They had sold. Slowly at first, then steadily. The cabinet system became popular with aging-in-place contractors. The pantry drawer was used in accessible apartment renovations. A simplified version eventually reached several national home improvement stores. The small distributor was later acquired by Harbor and Pine. Luke knew all of it. He had continued handling the commercial communication while telling Harbor and Pine that I had stepped away from the project and wanted him to manage everything. For years, payments went through a side business he controlled. Then Harbor and Pine decided to stop paying ongoing percentages and purchase the entire Reachline product family outright. That triggered an internal review. Someone discovered that my name was attached to the earliest Design Records prototype submissions and original Willow Reach account, but there was no clear record showing that I had actually transferred my position as creator to Luke. Harbor and Pine froze the purchase. They tried contacting me through an old email account and a post office box Luke still controlled. Finally, they found the Willow Reach bank account from the original development paperwork. The $6.8 million represented the purchase payment plus money Harbor and Pine had temporarily held while they reviewed the history. I barely heard the rest. One sentence kept repeating. My products had sold. Luke had known. My products had sold. Luke had known. 3 years earlier, after one of the worst family dinners of my life, I sat on the edge of our bed crying because Mom had mocked Willow Reach in front of relatives. Cassidy had called my prototypes expensive kitchen toys. Luke sat beside me, rubbing my back. I remembered exactly what he said. Maybe this is good for you, Aaron. You needed to learn that not every idea you have is special. At the time, I thought he was trying to help me accept failure. Now I knew he had already received payments from that same idea. He had watched me mourn something he knew was alive. He had watched me lose confidence in myself while depositing money created by the work he told me was worthless. I gripped the edge of Mr. Patel's desk. Ms. Walker, Caroline said. Yes, we would like to discuss how you want to proceed. We're also announcing the Reachline acquisition publicly in 12 days. Saturday the 23rd. We already have our fall accessibility campaign scheduled. I stared out through the glass office wall. Saturday the 23rd. Cassidy's baby shower was Saturday the 23rd. I knew because Mom had mentioned it before I knew the baby was Luke's. For a moment, the entire future seemed to narrow into one date. What will the announcement say? That Harbor and Pine acquired Reachline from its original creator, and that we would like you involved in future design consultation if you're interested. My name. Of course. I closed my eyes. My name. Not Luke's. Mine. I did not feel rich. I felt robbed, not only of money, of years, of pride, of the knowledge that something I created had helped real people. I called Michelle from the bank parking lot. She answered cheerfully. Hey, aren't you working? Luke is sleeping with Cassidy. Silence. She's pregnant. Another silence. Then Michelle said a word I cannot repeat here. I laughed and immediately started crying. I told her about the house, Mom, the SUV, the savings. Then I told her about Willow Reach. She thought I was having a breakdown. 6 million what dollars? Aaron. I know. Are you sure? No. That was the most truthful answer I could give. Michelle drove home from Virginia that night and refused to let me stay in the hotel. For the next 2 weeks, I slept in her spare room beneath a framed poster of the Blue Ridge Mountains, while my former life rearranged itself without me. Cassidy moved into my house 3 days later. I learned through Instagram. She posted herself standing in my kitchen wearing Luke's shirt. Behind her was my pottery bowl, my plant on the windowsill, my dish towels hanging from the oven. Her caption said, "New beginnings. Sometimes life puts you exactly where you belong." My mother commented, "Everything happens for a reason." More than 1,000 people liked it. I turned off notifications. Luke called the next evening. "Where are you staying with a friend? Which friend? Why I need an address for some paperwork. Send it to the clinic." He paused. "You sound okay. What did you expect? I don't know. Did you expect me to be falling apart?" I didn't say that. Then he changed his voice into the gentle tone he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. "How are you doing for money?" I nearly laughed. "Fine. You only had a few $100s. I'm managing. If you need something reasonable, I can send you some." This man had taken money generated by my work for years, moved $30,000 out of our savings, taken my vehicle, and moved my sister into my home. Now he was offering me grocery money like charity. No thanks. Don't make this about pride. It isn't. What does that mean? Nothing. Then he said Cassidy has a doctor's appointment Friday. Mom thought you might hear about it from somebody else. They wanted a reaction. They needed one. Without my anger, their story had no villain. Okay, I said. That's it. What would you like me to say? He had no answer. I hung up. 5 minutes later, Mom texted, I know you're hurt, but freezing everyone out isn't mature. Cassidy is under a lot of stress. Please don't contact her directly. I had not contacted Cassidy once. Another message followed. We all have to move forward eventually. I typed 3 angry replies and deleted them all. Then I wrote one word, understood. Mom called immediately. I did not answer. Something strange happens when the family member who always explains herself suddenly stops explaining. Everyone else becomes deeply uncomfortable. During those 12 days, Harbor and Pine showed me the history of Reachline. The products had not become famous overnight. That actually made the truth easier for me to accept. Contractors had simply discovered that they worked. Older homeowners liked being able to reach dishes without climbing onto stools. People recovering from shoulder surgery liked pantry shelves that came toward them. Apartment developers began requesting accessible cabinets in certain units. Caroline sent me anonymized customer feedback. A woman in Ohio wrote that after her stroke, she could make breakfast without asking her husband for help. A man in Arizona wrote that his mother finally stopped climbing onto a step stool after 2 falls. A contractor in Minnesota said clients asked for Reachline by name. I sat at Michelle's kitchen table and cried. Luke had stolen more than income. He had stolen the knowledge that my work mattered. That was the part I could not forgive. I moved into a modest, furnished townhouse 10 minutes from the clinic. I bought a used dark blue Honda CR-V. I bought a mattress, 2 plants, a set of dishes, and the ugly green chair Luke had refused to let me buy, because he said it looked like furniture from a dentist's office. I went back to work. That surprised everyone later. Money had given me choices, but my patients had done nothing wrong. I loved occupational therapy before Luke and I intended to love it after him. Meanwhile, Luke still believed the Harbor and Pine transaction was merely delayed. Cassidy told the internet. Her social media transformed almost overnight. First came ultrasound pictures, then a photograph of a giant oval diamond ring with the caption, "When a man knows what he wants, he shows it." Then photographs from a luxury SUV dealership. Then champagne glasses beside the words, "Big things coming." Mom commented on everything. You deserve every blessing. So proud of the life you're building. Finally, the invitation for Cassidy's baby shower appeared. It had quietly become both a baby shower and an engagement celebration. The venue was a renovated barn outside Cary. Nearly 90 guests, catered food, a flower wall, custom signs bearing Luke and Cassidy's initials. The date was Saturday the 23rd, the same Saturday Harbor and Pine planned to announce Reachline. For the first time since leaving the house, I felt something close to anticipation. Not because I wanted to humiliate anyone, because for once I knew exactly when my name would stop being invisible. Luke found out something was wrong 4 days before the shower. Harbor and Pine stopped speaking with him and confirmed that the purchase had been completed through the verified original creator. My phone rang 11 times in 2 hours. I ignored every call. Then came the texts. Call me. Now. This is serious. Whatever they told you, you don't understand the situation. Then we need to talk before you make a mistake that hurts both of us. The next morning, Luke was waiting outside my clinic. He looked terrible. Luke usually treated appearance like part of his job. Pressed shirt, clean shoes, hair perfect. That morning, his shirt was wrinkled and his eyes were bloodshot. We need to talk. I have patience. This is bigger than your job. No, it isn't. A coworker passed behind me and slowed. I didn't want a scene. There's a coffee shop across the street. 10 minutes. We sat near the window. Luke didn't order anything. I bought coffee. I wanted him to watch me pay for it. Harbor and Pine contacted you, he said. Yes. How much did they tell you? Enough? You need to understand how this started. I'd love to. I was trying to help you. That answer was so insulting I almost admired it. You were helping me by telling me my work failed. At first it did. It was selling. Not much. You knew it was selling. You hated the business side. I handled it. You handled it so well you forgot to mention they were paying you. I used that money for us. For us, the mortgage, vacations, repairs, hotel rooms with Cassidy. His face changed. That was enough. I leaned back. You told me not every idea I had was special. He froze. You remember that? Yes. He looked away. You said it while Reachline was already paying you. Aaron, you sat beside me while I cried because I thought I had failed. You knew I hadn't. I was trying to get you to move on. Why? Because you became obsessed with it. No. Why did you need me to believe it failed? He said nothing. Then I understood. If I knew it was succeeding, I would have asked questions. Luke's jaw tightened. That is not fair. It's exactly fair. He rubbed his face. I was going to tell you eventually. When silence. After you threw me out, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. I stared at him. Did you plan the separation before the Harbor and Pine payment? Numb. Look at me. He didn't. Did you? Finally, he whispered. I wanted everything settled before the transaction closed. There it was. He had scheduled my disposal. You wanted me gone before the money arrived. I thought it would make things cleaner. Cleaner. You were going to be okay, Aaron? I stared at him. He actually believed that made him less cruel. You always land on your feet, he said. That sentence hurt more than almost anything else. My mother's philosophy spoken through my husband. Aaron can handle it. I could survive with less. Therefore, everyone else could take more. You knew I had $700. Temporarily. You took the car. You have one now. His eyes moved toward my Honda in the parking lot. What did you buy? A used CR-V. With what money? I smiled. Mine. His expression changed. How much did Harbor and Pine pay you? Why? Because some of that belongs to me. No. I sold the product. You sold my product and told me nobody wanted it. I made it commercially viable. You made me believe it was commercially dead. People nearby had begun glancing toward us. Luke lowered his voice. This is exactly why living with you became impossible. I smiled. Then congratulations. You don't have to anymore. I stood. He reached out and caught my wrist. Not hard, but enough. I looked down at his hand. He released me. Aaron, please. Cassidy is pregnant. And we made commitments based on that money. What commitments? He realized too late what he had admitted. The ring, silence, the SUV. He looked away. What else? Nothing you need to worry about. You spent money you didn't have. I expected the purchase to close. And now his voice dropped. We can fix this. We. The most useful word in a selfish person's vocabulary. No, I said. You can fix what you did. You're enjoying this. No, I'm enjoying knowing the truth. I walked out. By lunch, Mom sent me a message long enough to require scrolling. She said she had recently learned there may have been misunderstandings surrounding Willow Reach. She said Luke had handled a complicated situation imperfectly, but had contributed enormously. She said money could destroy families when resentment took over. The final paragraph invited me to Sunday dinner so we could discuss something fair. I replied no. Then Cassidy texted, "Are you seriously going to punish my baby because you're mad at me?" I wrote. "Your baby has nothing to do with money earned by my work." She responded immediately, "You didn't earn all of it. Luke did the real work getting it into stores while you basically abandoned it. My invention had gone from stupid shelves to a family asset in less than a week." "Interesting," I wrote. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. The day before the baby shower, Aunt Sharon called. She was my father's younger sister, and one of the few relatives who had not chosen sides publicly. "Your mother is telling everyone Luke rescued Willow Reach after you gave up on it. That sounds like Mom. She says you're refusing to support Cassidy because you're jealous of the baby. Also sounds like Mom. There's something else. What your father kept one of your prototypes." I went quiet. Dad had died 5 years earlier from a sudden heart attack. He did. "The ugly one with the red handle. It's in my garage. He took it when your mother wanted him to throw out all the junk after you stopped working on the project." I swallowed. "Why?" "He said you might want it someday." Dad had been too quiet. Mom favored Cassidy. He had avoided arguments instead of stopping them. But he had never laughed at my work. Aunt Sharon continued, "He used to show it to people." I closed my eyes. What did he say that his daughter built it? For years, the loudest voice in my childhood had been my mother's. I had forgotten that quiet belief counted too. The next day I attended Cassidy's celebration. Not because I wanted revenge, because Aunt Sharon invited me, and for once I refused to let my family act as if I had disappeared. I wore navy trousers, a cream blouse, and the gold earrings Dad gave me after graduate school. I drove my Honda to the venue and sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes with both hands on the steering wheel. My body still remembered them, even when my mind no longer feared them. I could hear Mom calling me difficult, Cassidy calling me cold, Luke saying I didn't understand. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. "You don't need them to agree," I whispered. Then I went inside. The barn was filled with white flowers, sage green tablecloths, gold balloons, and photographs of Luke and Cassidy, arranged as though they had been a couple for years instead of months. Conversations softened when I entered. A cousin whispered, "Oh my God." Mom reached me first. "What are you doing here?" "Hello to you too. You weren't invited." Aunt Sharon appeared behind me. "I invited her." Mom's jaw tightened. "This is Cassidy's day." "I know. Then please don't ruin it." "I'm standing quietly in a barn, Mom. Whatever you're planning, I'm not planning anything." Cassidy approached wearing a fitted, blush-colored dress. Her pregnancy was visible now. "What do you want?" "Nothing." She laughed. "You show up here and expect me to believe that it's also an engagement party, apparently. Luke and I are building a future. I hope it's structurally sound." Aunt Sharon coughed into her hand. Cassidy lowered her voice. "You think you're so clever because Harbor and Pine gave you money. You mean paid me for my work. Luke made that work successful. Then why did they pay me?" Her cheeks reddened. "Because you got lucky with paperwork." Luke stepped closer. "Enough." I looked at him. The salesman confidence was gone. "Aaron, don't do this. Do what you know exactly what. I came to a family event. You haven't behaved like family for months. Neither did you." Mom hissed. "People are watching." "Yes," I said. They usually are when you organize your entire life around what they think. Then I walked away. Old Erin would have stayed and defended herself. New Erin wanted a chicken biscuit. At 3 o'clock, Cassidy's best friend tapped a glass and called everyone toward the front. Luke and Cassidy stood underneath a wooden sign bearing their initials. Mom gave a speech. She talked about courage, fresh starts, family, and choosing love, even when other people did not understand. Then she praised Luke. Luke has always had the gift of seeing opportunity where other people see limitations. I looked at Aunt Sharon. She rolled her eyes. Mom continued. He took an idea nobody believed in and turned it into something real. My phone vibrated. 3:15. Another phone vibrated. Then another. Harbor and Pine had published its scheduled fall campaign. A cousin glanced at his screen. His eyebrows lifted. The woman beside him leaned over. Someone whispered my name. Mom kept speaking. Some people are dreamers. Luke is a doer. And I could not be prouder of the future he has built for my daughter. More phones buzzed. Cassidy noticed first. Then Luke. His face drained of color. Aunt Sharon opened the post on her phone. At the top was a photograph of me standing beside the original red-handled prototype Dad had saved. The headline read, Original Reachline Creator, Erin Walker joins Harbor and Pine Accessible Living Initiative. The article told the story of Ruth, the patient who inspired my first design. It described my occupational therapy background. It showed an old photograph of my garage workspace. And beneath the photograph was my name. Mine, not Luke's. The room changed. You can feel when 90 people simultaneously realize they have been told two versions of the same story. Mom stopped speaking. Cassidy grabbed her phone. She read the headline, then looked at Luke. What is this? He reached for her arm. Not here. What does original creator mean? Several guests turned toward me. I did nothing. That was the beautiful part. I did not need a microphone. I did not need documents. I did not need to call anyone a liar. The truth had arrived by itself. Cassidy scrolled through the post. Luke. Cassidy. You told me you built this. I commercialized it. You said she abandoned it. I handled the business side. You told me nobody wanted her version. Luke glanced around the room. We are not doing this here. One of his coworkers was standing near the bar. He looked fascinated. Mom climbed down from the small platform. Erin, I knew that tone. Come fix this. For once, I stayed where I was. A guest asked Luke, so did Erin invent it? Luke forced a laugh. It was collaborative. No, I said. The room quieted. Luke looked at me. I designed the original Reachline products before Luke ever contacted a distributor. He crossed his arms. You wouldn't have sold anything without me. That might be true. His expression shifted. I was never good at selling. You were. He relaxed slightly. Then I continued. What you did wrong was tell me there were no sales. Nobody moved. Mom whispered, This is not the place. I looked at her. You just spent 5 minutes telling 90 people he turned my failed idea into something real. Her face reddened. Cassidy looked between us. What does she mean you told her there were no sales? Luke said nothing. I looked at him. You remember the night you told me not every idea I had was special. His eyes dropped. That was after Mom laughed at Willow Reach during dinner. I cried in our bedroom because I thought I had wasted 2 years of my life. You sat beside me and told me failure would make me more realistic. The room was completely silent. Reachline was already earning money then. Cassidy stared at Luke. You knew. He rubbed his jaw. Aaron is simplifying a complicated situation. No, I said softly. For once, I'm making it very simple. I looked around the room. I knew my work was succeeding. He let me believe it had failed. Mom said Luke probably thought he was protecting you. I turned toward her. From what knowing I was good at something, she had no answer. I looked back at Luke. You didn't just take money from my work. You watched me grieve something you knew wasn't dead. His face changed. That sentence finally reached somewhere. Then Cassidy started crying. I can't believe you did this to me. She was looking at Luke. Not me. He blinked. Did what to you? You told me the Harbor and Pine money was guaranteed. Cassidy, you said the house was handled. Stop. You said the SUV was handled. You said my ring was nothing compared to what was coming. People nearby were openly staring now. Mom grabbed Cassidy's arm. That is enough. But Cassidy yanked away. You told me the money was yours. Luke went white. I understood something then. Cassidy had not fallen in love with Luke despite his money. She had fallen in love with the future he had promised using mine. One of Cassidy's friends whispered, "Oh my God." Luke looked at me. This is what you wanted. No. You knew this announcement was coming. Yes. You came here to humiliate us. I came here because Aunt Sharon invited me. You knew what would happen. I knew Harbor and Pine would tell people who created Reachline. I looked at Mom. I didn't write your speech. Then at Cassidy. I didn't tell you to buy a ring with money Luke didn't have. Then at Luke. And I definitely didn't tell you to build your new life around a payment you were never entitled to. Nobody had an answer. I picked up my purse. Mom stepped toward me. Aaron, please. What we need to talk. About what family? I looked at Cassidy. Then Luke. Then my mother. No. You need to talk to each other. I walked out. My hands shook so badly by the time I reached my Honda that I dropped my keys between the seats. I sat behind the wheel and cried. Not because I regretted anything. Because dignity does not mean numbness. You can know you did the right thing and still grieve the family you wished you had. Aunt Sharon found me 10 minutes later and climbed into the passenger seat. Neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "Your dad would have been proud." I wiped my face for blowing up a baby shower. "No," she smiled, "for telling the truth without becoming cruel." The party ended less than an hour later, but the moment that mattered most happened after everyone left. I didn't see it myself. Aunt Sharon heard about it from Cassidy, and months later, Cassidy confirmed every detail. Luke drove Cassidy and Mom back to the house I had left. The flower arrangements from the party were still in the trunk. The giant engagement ring was still on Cassidy's finger. They walked into the kitchen where I had stood with 2 bags less than 2 months earlier. The same kitchen island, the same spot where I had placed the SUV key. Cassidy asked Luke how much money he actually had. He tried to avoid answering. She asked again. Finally, he admitted that most of what they had been spending came from credit deposits and money he expected to replace after the Harbor and Pine purchase. Cassidy stared at him. You said we were rich. I said we were going to be fine. You told me Aaron was the failure, Cassidy. You told me she wasted years on a product nobody wanted. I was trying to explain no. You told me she was pathetic because she couldn't make it work. Luke slammed one hand onto the counter. Enough. Cassidy flinched. Then she looked around the kitchen, at the new nursery paint samples, at the catalogs, at the boxes of furniture they had ordered, at the life she had taken from me because she believed she was upgrading. Slowly she pulled the enormous ring from her finger and placed it on the kitchen island, exactly where I had placed my car key. Luke stared at it. What are you doing? I need to know what else you lied about. Mom told Cassidy she was emotional. Cassidy turned on her. You knew he was married to Aaron and told me this was a blessing. For once, Mom had no daughter left to blame, except the one standing in front of her. The next few months were not dramatic in the way movies are dramatic. There was no courtroom speech, no police escort, no reporter waiting outside. Life simply began sending invoices. The luxury SUV disappeared after the financing fell apart. The large house Luke had promised Cassidy never closed. The nursery contractor stopped halfway through the built-ins. The giant ring vanished. Eventually, Luke had to sell the house. I once begged to stay in because he could no longer afford the mortgage and the debts he had accumulated expecting Harbor and Pines payment. Cassidy moved out before the baby was born. Their relationship had been strongest when I was the common enemy. Once I disappeared from the triangle, they were forced to look at each other. Luke discovered Cassidy's admiration depended heavily on the lifestyle he promised. Cassidy discovered Luke's ability to control a woman was much less romantic when the woman being controlled was her. I did not celebrate. By then, my life was moving in another direction. Harbor and Pine asked whether I would consult on the next generation of Reachline products. My first instinct was no. Luke had contaminated that dream for me. Then Caroline arranged a meeting with designers and occupational therapists. They asked good questions. They listened. Nobody called my work cute. Nobody treated me like I was playing entrepreneur. For the first time, my clinical career and the design work I loved existed in the same room without someone telling me I had to choose which part of myself was legitimate. I said yes. A few months later, Cassidy asked to meet. Her son Noah had been born healthy. I agreed to coffee. She arrived carrying him against her chest. She looked exhausted, not glamorous, not victorious, just tired. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I'm sorry," for what her eyes filled. "Everything. That's a large word, I know." She looked at Noah. "Luke told me your marriage was already over before anything happened." "It wasn't. I know that now. You knew he was still sleeping in my bed." She closed her eyes. "Yes. You knew you were coming to dinner at my house." "Yes. You moved into that house 3 days after I left." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Yes." I did not comfort her. She needed to feel the weight of her own answers. Finally, she whispered, "I was jealous of you." I almost laughed. "Of me? You never needed anyone." "That wasn't true." "I know." She wiped her face. "You had a career. Dad respected what you did. Mom depended on you for everything, even when she complained about you. Everybody called you when something went wrong. I felt like you were always the real adult, and I was always the little sister. So you wanted my husband too." She looked down. "At first, I wanted him to choose me. The honesty hurt more than an excuse would have. And once he did, I liked winning." There it was. Not pretty, but true. I looked at Noah sleeping against her. "I don't hate you, Cassidy." She raised her eyes. "I don't trust you. That's different." She nodded. "I understand. You don't get the sister you had before." Her face crumpled. "I know. I hope you become a good mother. I hope Noah grows up loved. If I see you at Aunt Sharon's house, I can say hello. Maybe someday we can become something else. Do you think you'll forgive me? I may have already started." She looked hopeful. Then I finished. "Forgiveness is not the same as access." Her expression fell. "That's fair." "No," I said. "None of this was fair. But it's honest. My relationship with Mom took longer. For months she insisted she had merely reacted badly to a difficult situation. She wanted language soft enough that she never had to look directly at what she had done. Eventually, after I stopped answering requests, arranging repairs, solving Cassidy's problems, and showing up every time Mom needed something, she began to realize how much of our relationship had consisted of access to my labor. One evening, she came to the small design workspace Harbor and Pine had helped me build beside a community therapy center. "I saw the story about you on television," she said. "A local station had run a short feature on accessible home design. Okay. They called you the founder." "I am." She nodded, then said, "Cassidy is struggling." I almost laughed. "Mom, I'm not asking you for money." "Good, she's your sister." "I know, she has Noah." "I know." Mom sighed. "You're very difficult to talk to now." "No, I'm difficult to manipulate now." Her head turned sharply. "That is unfair. Is it I made mistakes?" "What mistakes?" Her face tightened. "I've apologized. You've apologized that things became painful." "They did. That is not the same thing." She stared at me. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth." Silence stretched between us. Then slowly Mom said, "I should have told you when I learned about Luke and Cassidy." I waited. "I should never have helped Cassidy move into your home." I said nothing. "I should not have stood there while Luke took your car keys." My eyes burned. "And I should never have told you that you were taking up space." No, I whispered. She started crying. "I was always harder on you because you were capable." I looked at her. There it is again. What the excuse? I'm not making an excuse. You protected Cassidy from consequences because she cried. You handed me consequences because I didn't. Mom looked down. You were stronger, so I deserved less, no. But that's what you gave me. She was silent. I continued. You didn't make me strong. You noticed I was strong and used it as permission not to take care of me. Mom covered her mouth. For once I did not rescue her from the sentence. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know how to fix 30 years. You can't." Her face fell. "But you can behave differently tomorrow." We did not hug. I think that matters. Real boundaries do not disappear because someone finally says sorry. Mom and I eventually began having lunch every few months. Neutral places. No requests. No money. No messages asking me to fix Cassidy's life. The first time Mom slipped and asked whether I could help Cassidy with rent, I ended lunch and left. She learned, slowly, not perfectly. Luke became someone I heard about instead of someone who lived inside my head. He sent messages for a while. Some were angry, some nostalgic. On what would have been our 10th anniversary, he wrote, "Do you ever miss what we had?" I looked at the screen for a long time. Then I answered, "I miss who I thought we were." I blocked him afterward. That was the last conversation we ever had. A year after I walked into that bank, Harbor and Pine helped me open a small adaptive design lab connected to the therapy center. We named it the Ruth Project. Ruth, the patient who inspired the original Reachline cabinet, was 82 by then. When I told her, she cried. Our workshop was nothing extravagant. 2 large tables, a basic 3D printer, a woodworking bench, a testing kitchen with cabinets at different heights. We brought in therapists, caregivers, seniors, people recovering from strokes, people living with arthritis, and people who used wheelchairs. Our rule was simple. Nobody designed for people without listening to them. Sometimes our solutions were incredibly small. A better handle, a lower shelf, a drawer that required less grip strength, a hinge that stopped at the right angle. A small change could give someone back an ordinary part of the day. That mattered to me. At our first anniversary event, Ruth sat in the front row beside Michelle and Aunt Sharon. After I spoke, an older man approached me. His wife had Parkinson's. He shook my hand. She can make coffee by herself again because of your cabinet. I had more money than I ever expected to have. That sentence still felt richer. After the event, Aunt Sharon handed me a small envelope. I found something else of your dad's. Inside was an old photograph. Dad stood in his garage beside my first Reachline prototype, one hand resting on the ugly red handle. He was smiling. I turned the photograph over. In his handwriting were 8 words. Erin's shelf contraption. Still think she'll make it work. I sat down. For years I had believed the loudest voices were the truest voices. Mom had been louder than Dad. Cassidy had demanded more attention. Luke had repeated his lies until they sounded like facts. But quiet belief had existed too. I just hadn't known how to hear it. I pressed the photograph against my chest and cried for the father who should have spoken louder, and for the daughter who had spent too many years believing silence meant nobody saw her. Then I thought about the morning I left my old house. Cassidy telling me those stupid shelves had ruined my marriage. Luke watching me put the SUV key on the counter. Mom telling me some women build a life while others merely take up space in one. For a long time I hated that sentence. Now I understand why it stayed with me. My mother had been right about one thing. I did need to figure out who had actually been building my life. For years I thought being family meant being the person who stayed, the person who forgave first, the person who drove across town, the person who loaned the money, the person who solved the problem, the person who understood everybody else's reasons, the person who always made more room. But there is a difference between making room for people and allowing them to erase you. Luke wanted the value of my work without giving me credit for it. Cassidy wanted the life she thought I had. Mom wanted a daughter strong enough to carry everybody without ever asking to be carried. And I had spent years giving all 3 of them what they wanted because I confused being useful with being loved. I don't anymore. Love without respect becomes entitlement. Loyalty without boundaries becomes permission. And strength without self-worth becomes a weapon other people learn to use against you. The greatest revenge of my life was not watching Luke lose the house. It was not watching Cassidy take off the ring he bought with money he never had. It was not seeing my mother finally understand that the daughter she treated as disposable had created something valuable. It wasn't even the $6.8 million. The greatest revenge was waking up one ordinary Tuesday morning in a home that felt peaceful, making coffee, opening my notebook, and realizing there was nobody left in my life whose approval I needed before trusting my own mind. I was no longer the daughter who deserved less because she could handle more. I was no longer the wife who was useful until someone softer came along. I was no longer the sister expected to surrender whatever Cassidy wanted because she was more sensitive. I was Erin, a therapist, a designer, a woman who had been betrayed by people she loved and still refused to become cruel just because cruelty had been handed to her. My mother once told me some women build a life and some women only take up space in one. She was right. I finally learned who had been building the life all along. And I finally learned who had only been taking up space in mine. So I chose myself. And this time nobody got to tell me that was selfish. If you were in my place, which betrayal would have been hardest to forgive, the affair, your own mother choosing your sister, or discovering that your husband had spent years watching you believe you were a failure while secretly profiting from your work? And after everything Erin's family did, would you ever let them back into your life, even with boundaries? Or would you close that door forever?